What is up, guys? My name is Lex. I've actually never been to this area before. It looks like it's the second floor of the pool. I'm not sure if it's only for registered guests of the hotel, but we got up here. Well, while I was waiting for my 510 seat, I decided to go to the bar and get myself a drink. I got an old-fashioned Maker's Mark, and I gotta say, it's way too strong for me. I don't drink cocktails. I don't drink drinks this strong. I usually drink Bud Light, Miller Lite, IPAs. I took one sip of this and I was drunk. Anyway, we're waiting for our 510 seat, but in this video, I'm gonna go over my tips of how to get through a downswing. I just recently went through a 25K downswing, and I'm gonna let you guys know what I did, what I went through, to hopefully help you guys if you're going through a downswing as well. Well, I just got called for my seat. I'm gonna head inside. Let's play some poker. Let's get down to the table. Let's get to the action. Let's go. First hand, the action folds all the way to the big blind, who calls $25. I've got pocket tens in the straddle. I raise it up here to $100, and my opponent makes a call. Heads up to 9-5 deuce rainbow with an overpair. I bet $80, and my opponent now check raises me to $325. Now, in my opinion, he really shouldn't have too strong of a hand on this board. He shouldn't have an overpair to the board after limp calling preflop. He shouldn't have pocket nines or even pocket fives because he didn't raise preflop as well. I don't think he's ever going to have 9-5 or 9 deuce, 5 deuce. So I feel like a lot of the time here he's going to have a hand like ace 9, king 9, queen 9, or maybe some bluffs. Versus this size, I make the call and we see the 6 of spades on the turn. This card does change some things. It brings in 3-4 and 7-8 for a straight, but I feel like it's pretty unlikely for this particular player to be check raising that on the flop, and now he continues for $500. Now, this particular player, since I've sat down, has been playing a lot of hands. He's been betting big. Sometimes he seems to have it, sometimes he doesn't. So it is possible he could still be bluffing here. It's possible he could be betting this big with a top pair holding, like ace 9, king 9. It's also possible he could have a straight, 2 pair, or set. I've got about $1,900 left in my stack. If I make this call, I'll have about $1,400 left on the river. I kind of made up my mind here on the turn. Either I'm going to call this bet and call most rivers or fold here on the turn. And after putting in $500, I've kind of made up my mind that as long as the river is not an 8, ace, king, or 9, I'll probably just call any bet. When the river card's the jack of diamonds, and my opponent jams all in, I make a very quick call and get shown Jack 9 offsuit for a river 2 pair, which is going to beat our pocket tens. And my very first hand here at the Hard Rock, I get stacked. When I look back at this hand, obviously I got very unlucky. My opponent only had 5 outs to win, and he hit one of them on the river. But I do feel like I made a mistake here. I should have taken my time on this river bet. I just made the snap call when he jammed all in, and I think if I would have thought about it a little bit more, I would have realized he probably isn't shoving here with anything but 2 pair, and I probably could have folded my pocket tens, but we live and learn. What great timing to lead into my first tip when going through a downswing, and that is play more hours. If you're losing over and over again, you're most likely dealing with negative variance, which is exactly what I just dealt with in that last hand. I was 90% favorite to win with pocket tens, and I lost with that jack on the river. If you keep getting bad beat or coolered, or you can't pick up any hands, and when you do pick up hands, you get cracked, a way to combat this bad variance is by putting in more hours. More hands seen, more hours played will hopefully allow you to break this bad run. When I'm running bad, I try to play as many hours as I can while the game is good and I feel mentally strong. After getting whacked for $2,500, I pick up King Queen of Hearts under the gun. I raise to $75, button calls, big blind calls, and Straddler, the guy who stacked me the hand before, makes the call as well. 4 ways to 9-7 deuce 2 clubs. Completely missing on this board when the big blind checks, straddle checks. I check and the button checks behind. Turn card, King of Spades, now giving me top pair, Queen Kicker. Big blind checks again, straddle checks again. I'm definitely not going to be checking my top pair holding after these both players check now, so I make it $250. Button makes the fold, but the big blind check raises me to $650. Now this particular player is very aggressive, but he doesn't tend to bluff very often. It's definitely possible he could have a lot of strong hands on this board. Pocket nines, sevens, deuces, king 9, 7 9, king 7, king deuce, all sorts of 2 pairs and sets, but versus this sizing, I decided to call and see what happens here on the river. And once we see the 4 of diamonds, I've got about $2,000 left in my stack. My opponent jams all in, and with 1 pair, not going to be calling, so I make the fold. Moving along, the same player who got me with Jack 9 offsuit earlier has been playing a bunch of hands. He raises under the gun to 75. I've got King Jack of hearts. I 3-bet to 250, just looking to isolate this player in position, which is exactly what happens when he makes the call. The flop comes out 9 high with 2 spades. I decide to c-bet large on this flop, $350, thinking he'll fold out some small pocket pairs and his ace-high hands that we're losing to. Once he calls, I put him on pocket pairs and maybe flush draws, and when the turn card's the ace of clubs, I feel like it's a great card for me to continue to barrel here. I could have ace-queen, ace-king, and also if I did have jacks, queens, or kings, I may still bet small here on the turn, trying to get value from pocket pairs and flush draws as well. So when he checks, I bet out again $350, and once he calls again here on the turn, I'm just going to give up, and when the board pairs on the river, he checks, I check back, and he ends up winning here with ace-7 of spades for top pair, and we are getting completely crushed this session, down almost $4,000 now within the first hour. My second downswing tip is to look at the hands that you're playing. If you're losing, sometimes it's not just always bad variance. A lot of the times, it's bad plays as well. Try sending hands to friends, posting hands on forums or social media. Find players that are better than you and then ask them for advice. A lot of the times when I'm going through a downswing, I look back at the hands I played during a session, and I realize I could have played many spots better. Reviewing your hands and trying not to make the same mistakes next time can definitely help when you're losing. I'm getting absolutely crushed this session, down over $4,000. I have won a couple hands back to back. I've got a little over $3,000 stack before I look down at queens in the straddle. There's a cutoff raise to 75 by a tight reg, a button call by a recreational player, and now the small blind player, who's another tight pro, 3-bet squeezes to $350. So there's a raise to 75, a call, and a 3-bet squeeze in front of me. I feel like with pocket queens, we don't really want to be calling here too often. We want to be 4-betting with a hand this strong. But if I 4-bet against these tight regs, I feel like it's hard to get action from worse hands. If I make it $800 here, I feel like ace-king or ace-queen or pocket tens or pocket jacks may just fold, given the fact that there's a recreational player on the button, and the cutoff player doesn't seem to call very often when he gets 3-bet. I feel like I can call here in position with queens. The cutoff player will fold, but maybe the button player will come along with a call. So that's exactly what happens. When I cold call this 3-bet, the cutoff initial raiser folds, and the button recreational player makes the call. And we go 3 ways in a 3-bet pot with pocket queens. 6-3 deuce, 2 hearts. The small blind now continues for a $400 bet, which I have to say is a little bit concerning here. He 3-bet pre-flop, got 2 callers, and now is continuing on this board, but he may still bet here with pocket tens or pocket jacks. If he does have aces or kings, we're just going to have to lose another big pot. I don't feel like raising here on the flop makes too much sense. I think it's hard to get called by worse hands if I do raise, so I make the call for $400, and the button makes the call as well. So now we're going to the turn in a huge pot with one single pair, and it's the 9 of hearts. There's $2,300 in the middle, and the small blind slows down and checks, which is great news for me. I mean, I don't think he's checking with aces or kings, but it definitely is possible. I do feel like we most likely have the best hand against him, but there still is the button as well. Multi-way with only one pair on this board. When it checks to me, I decide to check this turn card, and the button jams all in for around $1,600 or $1,700. I asked the dealer for a count. He tells me around $1,700. The pot's $2,300. Could I ever fold pocket queens here? But am I ever any good? He could easily have a flush. He could have a set. I don't know. I don't think I can let this one go. If he's got me, he's got me. I'm down too much money. I make the call. I ask him if he wants to run it once or twice, which I never do anymore, but given the fact that I'm running so bad lately, I just want to try to reduce the variance a little bit. He decides to run it 2 times with me, and the river's brick off. He tells me he just has the ace of hearts and that's it. I show pocket queens, and luckily for us, my opponent ends up mucking, and I end up winning over a $5,000 pot here. Finally, the chips are being pushed in my direction, and we end up winning a massive one here with one single pair. After this hand, my stack is looking pretty good, but I'm actually in the game for $9,000 now. Finally some run good, although I'm still down a couple thousand on the session. With ace queen here in the straddle, there's an under the gun limp, a cutoff raise to 80. I decide not to 3-bet and call, and the limper makes the call as well. 3 ways to an ace high board. I check, under the gun checks, and the cutoff initial raiser checks behind. Turn card pairs to board. I check for a second time, and now the under the gun limper bets out small, $75. Once the cutoff player folds with ace queen, I feel like we're going to have the best hand here almost every single time. I can get value from flush draws, I can get value from weaker aces, so I raise it up here to $300. My opponent makes the call and the river card's an 8. I continue for a large sizing of $550, trying to get called by a weaker ace, and we do get called, and we are good to take down another pot here with top pair, trending back in the right direction, in the game for 9,000, working our way back to even. My third tip for you guys is sometimes you just gotta move down in stakes. If you're getting crushed at your normal game, it's okay to drop back down. Poker is a very tough game mentally. If you keep losing, it can really crush your confidence, which can lead to making the wrong plays at the wrong time, which also means you can lose more and more money. Sometimes by dropping down, this will allow you to boost your confidence while playing softer games and not risking as much money on the table. I would do this all the time when I was transitioning from 1-2 to 2-5. If I got crushed at 2-5, I would go back down to 1-2 for a couple sessions, try to get my confidence back, and I did the same thing when I started taking shots at 5-10. If I had a couple bad sessions at 5-10, I would go back to 2-5, try to play better, try to learn from my mistakes, try to get a run going, try to get some confidence back before I went back up to the same stakes, and you guys can do the same as well. If you're getting crushed, don't feel like you can't drop back down. Try to go down there, try to get some wins underneath your belt before going back to your normal game. It's around 4 a.m. now, and I never usually play poker this late, but 2 things are happening. 1, I'm still down a couple $1,000s, and 2, this game is off the chain. Tons of action and money on the table. Well, on this hand, I raise ace-jack of clubs over a limp and go heads up in position to an ace-5-6 rainbow board. When he checks, I bet $125, and he makes the call. Turn card is an ace, now giving me trips. When my opponent limp calls pre-flop and then check calls on this flop, I feel like he's going to have a pocket pair a lot of the time. I get super tricky and trappy and check this one back. And the river card's the 5, now giving me a full house. Ace is full of 5s, he checks for a second time. And like I said, I feel like he's going to have either a 6 here or pocket 7s or 8. So I decided to go with an overbet on this river to $800. Given the fact that I checked back on the turn, he probably isn't going to think I'm going to have an ace here, hardly ever. After thinking for around 10 or 15 seconds, my opponent flicks in 1 chip for a call. I feel like we could be chopping here, but when I show my hand, he mucks his hand. And just like that, we end up winning a nice pot here with ace-jack with a full house. At one point, I was stuck over $4,000. I'm in the game for $9,000, and after this hand, I have a $7,800 stack. I'm getting closer back to even, only $1,200 left to get back. At 4:45 a.m., I'm exhausted, but I look down at 6-7 of hearts. I raise the 75 and get 1 caller and flop a flush draw on a jack-high board. Heads up here, I continue for a $100 bet. My opponent min raises me to $200. Well, can't be folding for only $100 more with a 7-high flush draw, so I make the call. Turn card, King of Hearts, giving me a flush at 4:45 a.m. I'm not going to check and allow him to check this one back, so I lead out for a $400 bet, which gets very quickly snap called by my opponent. Leading here into the river, over $1,000 in the middle, and it's the 8 of clubs. Doesn't change anything at all. I'm definitely going to be betting here, but I don't want to bet too big. I feel like when he raises on the flop, he could have 2 pair like Jack 10, maybe a hand like Ace Jack or Queen Jack. So I bet out $600 and get very quickly called. Our flush is good, and we end up winning this last pot of the night. It's around 5 a.m. now, one of the sickest sessions I've played in a very long time. I came in and I got stacked. I lost basically every hand I played, over $4,000 in the red, but I kept grinding, I kept playing, I tried to keep my cool, I tried to not go on tilt, and I started running good as the night went on and ended up cashing out for $9,236 for a $236 profit. The next day I forced myself to wake up early and try to enjoy this beautiful weather we're having down here in South Florida. I took Rogue on a long walk, let him run and play around, and then I made my way over to the beach, which leads me into my final tip when you're going through a downswing, and that is sometimes you just need a break. Poker is a cruel game. It can be really tough to play, especially if you're playing for a living. Sometimes it's necessary to take a couple days or even a week off to rest. Downswings can bring something called escalated tilt. Escalated tilt is when you let the results from previous sessions affect your play in future sessions. This happens to me all the time. You're tilted from losing in the past week or the past month, and you play a hand really bad because you're so tilted from what happened previously. Let's say you're down 8 buy-ins, you come in and you start a session fresh, you get into a tough spot, immediately you get on tilt and blast off all your money. This is called escalated tilt, and if you take a break, sometimes you can subside that tilt as well. I tried to take my own advice, which is to rest, which is why I came out here to the beach. I have been going through a downswing lately. I've also been putting in a ton of hours at the poker table and making 1 or 2 YouTube videos a week, so I ended up taking the rest of the day just relaxing here in the sun, on the sand, in front of the water. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. My tips of how to make a downswing go a little bit easier. We're all going to lose in poker, but the way you handle it can definitely affect how much you lose as well. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. Until next time, I'll see ya.